Namaste, Laura here from Awakened and Autistic. And this is my cat Nellie. She's so sweet. And I almost didn't make this video because I don't know how to make the fancy videos with the cool music in the beginning and editing the videos with all the neat things in between, which I will learn eventually. But I wanted to make this video on what led me to my autism diagnosis. I got a couple questions about that, so I wanted to answer that. And if you have watched some of my videos and you like them, please like and subscribe to my channel so that way more people can see the stuff that I'm putting out. So without further ado, what led me to my autism diagnosis? So I was trying to think back to the very first moment when I had the thought of that I could be autistic. And I can go as far back as to 2015-ish. That's when I first moved to California. I'm from Pennsylvania, but I moved to California at the very end of 2014. And I remember making a list of all of the things I wanted to do after moving to California. And a lot of them were health focused. And my intuition is what brought me to California. I knew I would get the help that I needed out here. I knew there was a lot of healing I needed to do. So, one of those things was to look into schools for autistic adults. And I believe I did some research and I had emailed somebody and we were going back and forth. And then I don't remember why I never pursued that. And then I kind of just forgot about it for a while. And the reason I thought I was autistic or that I am autistic is I really had a lot of trouble in childhood, especially school. I have a lot of school trauma. I don't believe I was getting taught in the ways that were best for me. So I probably had some learning disabilities that were not getting picked up on. So because of that, I would get migraine headaches all of the time, and my grandmother would have to come pick me up from school. And I'd go home and I'd just get sick and throw up and just be sick the rest of the day. And that happened like a couple days a week. So I missed a ton of school, but I always got like decent grades. I didn't get like D's and F's, but I pretty much got like A, B's, and maybe some C's. So, because of the masking that women do in autism, I really just tried to fit in the best I could, but it was so much energy for me that it was like literally making me sick. And they did so many tests on me to try to figure out why I was getting migraines. They thought maybe it was a chemical in the school. They thought maybe yeah, they thought it was my heart. So I got heart tests done. I had a heart monitor. I had to get this test done where they glued all these things to my head. I think they were checking my brain. I don't know. I was younger, so I don't really know what they were doing. But they couldn't really find anything. Once I got to like right before college, I did go on a medication called Inderal, which is a beta blocker, and it's supposed to help the heart. So I was having heart palpitations, which was probably from the anxiety that comes from being autistic and just having that overwhelm all the time and not knowing why. So that's why I thought I could be autistic. I'm like, I always just felt different than everyone else. And I Google things a lot and I look things up a lot. So I read a little bit about autism. And I really think that a lot of people don't really know all that it entails, even the medical field right now. There's just so much misconceptions about it. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to start this channel. So anyway, other things that would happen is like I would have trouble at work. I went to school for dental hygiene, which I loved because it was focused like on one subject on teeth, and I love teeth. And that's one thing with autistics is they have like a special interest. And for some reason, mine was teeth. But before I became a hygienist, I went to school to be a dental assistant, and I had to learn on the job everything, and it was a lot of information at once. And one of the things I learned about people on the spectrum is that they get really overwhelmed and can have a meltdown if they get too many instructions at once or just too much to do at once. And I remember just coming home from work and crying, and my mom would just say, oh, just like suck it up. Like, you have to work. Like, this is just how it is, you know? And so I would just go and I would do it. So that was another thing. Then fast forward a little bit when COVID hit in 2020. At that point, I was doing dental hygiene, I think, for 14 years. And COVID happened, and we were off for a little while. And it was like probably the best time of my life when I didn't have to go to work for like 2 months. It was like, oh my goodness. Um, I ended up starting a coaching business, and that's a whole other video. But anyhow, I ended up going back to work, and we had to wear these KN95 masks, which are a little bit, actually a lot thicker than the regular masks that we wore before COVID. And after working for a few weeks, I started to realize that when I would get home at night, I'd have the worst. I felt horrible. I felt like I had a concussion, and all I could do was lay there and stare at the wall. Like I just had the worst headache. I couldn't eat. I just felt sick and nauseous. And that feeling would stay for a few days. So I was like, well, how am I supposed to work if I'm feeling that way and then I have to get up and go to work the next day and wear that mask again? So I had to take some time off of work because of that, and then realize later, oh my gosh, it's probably because my extreme sensitivities that come with the autism. I was just so sensitive to the mask, to the extra protection we had to wear. We had to wear like an extra gown and like a thing on our head. And I think it was just like way too much. And I was just so overwhelmed, and I couldn't do it. So another thing was, another thing that led me to the diagnosis then was I started dating again this year. And one of my things that's hard for me is like friendships and relationships. It's hard for me to like start friendships or relationships and then keep them long term because of the communication issues or just how our brains work differently. There would always be problems that come up, or maybe just people take me the wrong way or whatnot. So I was dating someone, and he would point things out to me of like how I could only talk about like a certain subject. Like I only talk about personal development. And that's because of our special interests. Like we get so focused on one thing, and like that's all we talk about. Then the other thing I noticed was that when I was with him, I only felt comfortable doing like a couple of things, which was like going to spiritual events that I'm used to going to, or going to the park and like sitting under a tree or going to the beach. There was just like limited things I could do. It was almost like I'm in this like bubble, and I was so comfortable with these things that I do in my life. And then this other person comes in, and they're able to like, just do all these other fun things. But for me, that felt overwhelming of like, oh, I don't know if I want to go do that day. That might be too much for me because I don't know if there's going to be a lot of things that trigger my sensory issues and whatnot. So that was another thing. And around the same time that I was dating that guy, I went on a retreat, a women's retreat in Utah. And this was the turning point. This was in, I believe, July of 2022, this past year. And on that retreat, I met another woman who was looking into seeing if she was autistic too. And we had a lot of the same traits out of like everyone in the group. Like both of us were, when we were in the group, we were just kind of quiet and like to ourselves and like not really interacting as much with the group. And that's how I've always been, because it's just like too overwhelming to have all these like conversations with different people. And I kind of just stay to myself. But after the retreat, we started this group on our phone where we could, like a chat group. And I noticed her and I both like were writing in there a lot. So I'm better at like typing out my feelings and stuff like that rather than communicating face to face sometimes. So I noticed I really like that chat group and started chatting a lot. And they're like, wow, I'm so glad you're opening up. You were kind of quiet at the retreat. And I was like, oh, like that's how they perceived me. I guess I was. So I got into chatting with this other woman who's actually a therapist, but she was just like at the retreat too. And she told me about this place called Wilderwood. It's in New Mexico, which I'm going to do a whole other video after this because there's a lot to say about that. And she told me that, she's on the wait list. It takes a couple months to get in, which is pretty awesome because usually it takes a couple of years to get a diagnosis. And I looked it up, and it's like actually like an equine therapy place. And I've been wanting to, like, that word kept coming up, which is like the horse therapy, where you can do trauma healing through the horses. So I was right away. I was like, I have to get this diagnosis. Like I just felt like it was like the next step on my path of um, I'm so into personal development. I'm like, I think this is just like the next thing. Like I just want to know. It would make my whole life make sense. And in the meantime, I was watching many videos on YouTube of other women talking about their late autism diagnosis, and I just resonated with them so much. And like I said, after COVID, I started my own coaching business. So I had my own program, and I was leading women through their own like spiritual awakening process and teaching Kundalini yoga and meditation and all of these things. But I don't know, with myself, I always just felt like there was like this missing link, and I'm different, still different than everyone, and I couldn't put my finger on it. So anyhow, once I started learning about the autism, I'm like, oh, this is all coming together. And now that's why I'm so excited to start this channel, because I feel like that was the missing piece also to how I'm going to help people in the world. And so now I feel like, oh, I'm more geared towards helping women who maybe are waking up to knowing that they're autistic as well and learning more about it. And I also just want to bring awareness to other people that don't have autism, because they really don't understand it. And we really are gifted, and we have a lot of gifts and talents and uniqueness, but sometimes it gets like stuffed under all this other stuff because of all the overwhelm and the burnout and the masking and all the things that comes with autism. And my whole life I've been through depression, anxiety, like suicidal thoughts, all of that, and that comes with the autism of just feeling like alone and different and all of that. So it is my intention to create this beautiful community where you feel safe and you can open up. And I know there's many communities out there that I've seen now so far, now that I'm awake to knowing that I have the autism. And I just want to create more resources for other people in case, you're feeling alone, or you just feel different, and you feel like you don't know how to get through certain tasks, like easy tasks in your life. And I've done so many things along the way on my spiritual path. I first got on this spiritual path. I'm kind of rambling now that that happens. I got on the spiritual path in like 2011, and since then I've done like many different trainings. So I done like the Kundalini yoga teacher training, a couple of those, yoga and the 12 steps of recovery. I was in Al-Anon for a little while, which is a sister group to AA. It's for friends and family of alcoholics. So I thought, oh, that's what's going on with me. I just grew up in all this alcoholism, and I have all of this trauma, which is true too. But on top of that, it was like not getting my needs met because nobody knew I was autistic. And even if they did know I was, they wouldn't even probably know back in the 80s what to do with that. So anyhow, I think I'm going to stop there. And there's lots of other topics I'd like to cover in future videos. And if anything comes up, if you have any questions, leave a comment or you can email me. I'd love to hear from you. I'm here to support you. That's the reason why I made this channel. And again, if you like this video, go ahead and like it, and also subscribe to my channel so that way more people can see these videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Namaste.